Marina had always adored antique things. There was something special about them, as if each item held its own story. That was why she couldn't pass by a massive, beautifully decorated mirror on display at a dusty street flea market. Its frame was covered in delicate carvings depicting intricate patterns, leaves, flowers, and unfamiliar symbols. The glass, although slightly tarnished, was surprisingly clean and seemed to attract the eye. "How much for this mirror?" Marina asked the seller, an elderly man with a tired face. He was silent for a long time, as if considering whether to answer at all. Finally, he squeezed out, "If you like it so much, take it. But remember, this mirror is not simple. Strange things are associated with it. It doesn't suit everyone." Marina laughed, deciding that the old man simply wanted to add mystery to the product in order to inflate the price. "What's strange?" "It will break if you don't polish it," she joked, but the man didn't laugh. "Be careful, girl," was all he said, taking the money and turning away, as if he didn't want to see her take the mirror away. When Marina returned home, she happily installed the find in her room. She placed the mirror opposite the window so that the sunlight would fall on it and enhance its beauty. There was something attractive in the reflection, as if the glass made the world a little brighter and clearer. The mirror spent the first night in her room and nothing strange happened. But the next day Marina noticed that something had changed in the reflection. At first, these were small things, as if the corner of her bed in the mirror looked a little different, or the curtains trembled, although there was no wind in the room. She attributed it to fatigue and lack of sleep. But when she accidentally dropped a comb in front of the mirror and, picking it up, looked into the glass, her heart sank. In the reflection she saw herself. But for a moment her face changed. A shadow ran across her features, making them alien, almost evil. Marina quickly turned away, feeling a chill run down her spine. "It just seemed that way," she muttered, but the mirror no longer seemed as attractive to her as before. The first night after the strange vision, Marina could not sleep. She lay curled up in bed, trying her best not to look at the mirror, although it attracted her gaze. It seemed that its glass, even in the darkness, was slightly glowing, as if it reflected not her house, but something completely different. Closer to midnight, she began to fall asleep, but through her half-sleep, she heard a quiet, barely audible sound, a whisper, coming from where the mirror stood. She opened her eyes, holding her breath. The room was dark, but a faint pulsating movement was clearly visible in the mirror. It seemed that the reflection of the room was slightly swaying, as if its surface was water. She stood up and came closer, shivering from the strange cold that filled the room. Looking into the glass, she saw neither herself nor her bedroom. The mirror reflected another room, dimly lit, empty, with gray walls covered in cracks. There were dark spots on the floor, like footprints. Marina's heart began to pound faster. "This is impossible," she whispered, unable to look away. And suddenly a figure appeared in the reflection. It slowly walked out from around the corner, moving unnaturally, jerkily, as if each movement was made with effort. At first glance, the figure resembled Marina, her silhouette, her hair. But the face, it was distorted, as if it were being looked at through broken glass. The eyes, too large and empty, looked straight at her. Marina gasped and stepped back, but her reflection in the mirror did not repeat her movement. It continued to stand in place, and then slowly tilted its head to the side, as if studying her. "Who are you?" she whispered, feeling her voice tremble with fear. The figure in the mirror suddenly grinned. It was not her smile. Too wide, too cold, as if someone had pulled her features apart. Then she raised her hand and began to slowly knock on the glass from the other side. Once, twice, 3 times. Each blow echoed as a dull sound in the room. Marina ran to the bed, trying to hide under the blanket, but the whisper filled the room again. "Open up! Let me out!" A voice rang out, quiet, hoarse, as if it were her own, but with someone else's intonations. She covered her ears, but the voice still penetrated her consciousness. When she opened her eyes, in the morning, the mirror was in its place. It again reflected only her room, as if nothing had happened. But Marina knew that this was not the end. Marina hardly slept at night anymore. Every evening the mirror began to come to life. Her reflection behaved strangely. Her movements did not match. Her gaze became more and more alien. She tried to hide the mirror. She covered it with a blanket, put it in a corner, but it did not help. The whisper still came from under the fabric, and sometimes, as soon as she glanced at it, it seemed that the figure on the other side was approaching, becoming clearer. That night, everything started differently. Instead of a whisper, she heard a loud rhythmic knock, as if someone was hitting the glass from the inside with incredible force. Marina jumped out of bed, with trembling hands turned on the night light. The mirror stood in the middle of the room, no longer covered with a cloth, as if someone had removed the blanket. Cracks were spreading on its surface, but they did not destroy the glass, but formed patterns reminiscent of a web. She came closer, as if under hypnosis, and saw that her reflection no longer looked like her at all. The eyes in the mirror were dark holes. The skin was pale, almost gray, and the mouth stretched into a terrible grin. "Come on," her own voice rang out, but distorted, as if from the depths of a well. "You want to finish this, don't you? Touch the glass." Marina stepped back, but at the same moment the figure on the other side took a step forward and pressed its hands to the glass. Its palms blurred, as if stuck to the surface, and began to squeeze out. "Oh, this can't be," Marina whispered, but her legs seemed to have grown to the floor, not allowing her to escape. A hand burst out of the mirror, then a second, and then the figure completely came out, stepping onto the floor of her room. It was her distorted reflection, but now it looked more alive than she did. It smiled, and then turned to Marina. "My time has come," it whispered, moving toward her. Before Marina could scream, the mirror lit up with a bright, icy light. An invisible force grabbed her, pulled her forward, and she felt the cold, viscous surface of the glass envelop her body. She was pulled in with incredible force, and the reflection took her place. Now she was on the other side. In her mirror world, everything seemed alien, faded, gray. The room of her reflection was empty, cold. The walls were riddled with cracks. She rushed to the glass, trying to knock it out, but the figure on the other side, her own reflection, now fully alive, looked at her with a slight smile and only waved. "Thank you for your place," a voice rang out. Then her eye walked away, leaving her in emptiness. She screamed, pounded on the glass, but no one heard her. She was part of the mirror now, forever trapped in this cold, alien world. The mirror stood in the room, once again perfectly smooth and silent, ready to await its next victim.